As colonial administrations took hold, the scramble for Africa intensified. European powers, driven by insatiable greed, tightened their grip. The exploitation of the continent's resources became even more ruthless. British interests focused on strategic locations like Egypt and South Africa, securing trade routes and access to valuable minerals. France expanded its influence across West Africa, establishing vast territories and imposing French culture and administration. Germany, a latecomer to the colonial game, sought to establish its own empire, claiming territories in East and Southwest Africa. Belgium, under King Leopold II, infamously exploited the Congo Free State, subjecting the local population to horrific abuses in the pursuit of rubber. The imposition of arbitrary borders continued to disrupt existing social structures, ignoring the complex tapestry of ethnic and cultural groups. Communities were divided, traditional governance systems undermined, and long-standing rivalries exacerbated. The Berlin Conference's decisions had far-reaching consequences, legitimizing the European powers' land grab and setting the stage for decades of colonial rule. African resistance to colonial rule took many forms, ranging from armed uprisings to peaceful protests and cultural preservation efforts. However, the superior military technology and organizational capabilities of the Europeans often proved overwhelming. Indigenous populations faced systematic discrimination and oppression, denied political rights, and economic opportunities. Forced labor became a common practice, as Africans were compelled to work on plantations and in mines to extract resources for the benefit of the colonial powers. Traditional African cultures and religions were suppressed, replaced by European languages, education systems, and religious beliefs. Missionaries played a significant role in this cultural transformation, establishing schools and hospitals, while also promoting Christianity. The long-term effects of the scramble for Africa are still felt today, with many African nations grappling with the legacy of colonial borders, ethnic divisions, and economic exploitation. The arbitrary boundaries drawn by European powers often led to conflicts and instability after independence. The economic structures established during the colonial era continued to favor the extraction of raw materials, hindering the development of diversified economies. Despite the challenges, the spirit of resistance and the desire for self-determination remained strong throughout the colonial period. African intellectuals and activists began to articulate a vision of Pan-Africanism, calling for unity and solidarity among all people of African descent. The seeds of future independence movements were sown as Africans began to organize and demand an end to colonial rule. The exploitation of resources led to environmental degradation, as forests were cleared and land was mined without regard for sustainability. The introduction of new crops and farming techniques also had unintended consequences for the environment. The colonial powers often justified their actions by claiming that they were bringing civilization and progress to Africa. However, the reality was that colonialism was primarily driven by economic and strategic interests, with little regard for the well-being of the African people. The scramble for Africa left a lasting scar on the continent, shaping its political, economic, and social landscape for generations to come. The legacy of colonialism continues to be debated and analyzed as scholars and activists seek to understand its complex and multifaceted impact. The story of the scramble for Africa serves as a cautionary tale, highlighting the dangers of unchecked imperialism and the importance of respecting the sovereignty and self-determination of all nations. It reminds us of the need to learn from the past and work towards a more just world. As colonial administrations solidified their control, the consequences of the scramble for Africa began to unfold. And these consequences reverberate to this day. Colonial rule led to the exploitation of African resources, hindering the continent's economic development and creating lasting dependencies. The imposition of foreign political systems disrupted traditional governance structures, leading to instability and conflict in many regions. The arbitrary borders drawn by European powers often divided ethnic groups and created tensions that continue to fuel conflicts. Imagine a village, split in two by a line on a map, its people now subjects of different empires, their traditions suddenly foreign. Or consider the mines, where men toiled for meager wages, extracting wealth that would never benefit their families or communities. While some infrastructure and educational institutions were introduced, they were primarily designed to serve colonial interests. Roads were built to transport resources, not to connect communities. Schools taught European values, often at the expense of local knowledge and culture. The legacy of imperialism has left a complex and enduring impact on Africa, shaping its political landscape, economic prospects, and social dynamics for generations to come. The echoes of those decisions made in European capitals still resonate in the halls of power and in the daily lives of millions. Independence brought hope, but also the burden of inherited problems. The artificial borders, the weakened institutions, the economic dependencies all remained. Even today, African nations grapple with the challenges of overcoming this history, striving to build stable, prosperous societies that reflect their own unique identities. The scars of the scramble for Africa are a reminder of the enduring consequences of unchecked ambition and the importance of respecting the sovereignty and self-determination of all nations. The continent's path forward requires acknowledging this past, addressing its lingering effects, and forging a future based on equality, justice, and mutual respect. It is a journey of healing, reconciliation, and the reclaiming of a narrative long distorted by colonial powers. And it is a journey that continues to unfold, with each generation striving to build a better tomorrow from the fragments of yesterday. The story of the Scramble for Africa is not just a historical account, it is a living legacy that shapes the present and influences the future of an entire continent. Let's delve deeper into the economic exploitation. Vast tracts of land were seized, transformed into plantations. Africans were forced to cultivate cash crops like cocoa, coffee, and rubber. These resources were shipped to Europe, enriching colonial powers while suppressing local economies. Local industries were deliberately stifled to prevent competition. This created a cycle of dependency that persists even now. Consider the disruption of traditional governance. Chiefs and elders, once respected leaders, were sidelined or co-opted. European administrators imposed their own systems of law and order. These systems often disregarded local customs and traditions. This undermined the authority of indigenous institutions. It sowed the seeds of political instability. The drawing of arbitrary borders is a particularly painful legacy. Families were divided, communities fragmented. Ethnic groups with long histories of conflict were forced together. This created tensions that erupted into civil wars and regional conflicts. The consequences of these artificial divisions are still felt today. Think about the cultural impact. African languages, religions, and artistic traditions were suppressed. European culture was promoted as superior. This led to a loss of cultural identity and a sense of inferiority. The psychological wounds of colonialism run deep. Yet, amidst all this, there is resilience and hope. Africans are working to reclaim their history and culture. They are building stronger, more democratic societies. They are striving for economic independence and self-determination. The journey is long and challenging, but the spirit of Africa endures. The future is being written now.